Are you sure? Okay, there we
I'm
are.
positive. Yes.
We are now live. Awesome.
Yes.
We're learning.
Welcome to the Light Gate.
Hello,
Just to let you
everyone.
know, we're broadcasting to you from New Orleans at UPRN and United Paranormal Radio Network, 107.7 FM and 105.3 FM. We are on Roku, we're on YouTube, Facebook, and a couple others. Roku cannot be in chat with us, I'm sorry to say, but we will describe everything, especially if we put up a film of things. We'll describe it as well as we can for our radio audience because we love y'all. And we go, Preston.
Okay. Yeah, well, I'm pretty excited. I think we've got a really cool show tonight. My name is Preston Dennett, as I'm sure you all know, but for those who don't know me, I've been a researcher since 1986, thereabouts. And my lovely co-host is Dolly Safran. She is an experiencer, a fully conscious experiencer, and the subject of my book, Symmetry. So yeah, we're very excited to be doing the Light Gate, and our guest is a really exciting guest. This is episode number 8, and our guest is Albert Rosales. I've been wanting to get him on the show from the beginning. He's someone who I really respect as a researcher. He's a researcher, he's an author, he's an experiencer, and he's had a huge influence on this field. Let me just read his bio here. Albert Rosales was born in Cuba, actually, where he experienced several strange events, both paranormal and UFO related, including very close-up sightings and perhaps missing time. We'll talk about that. But he migrated to Spain in 1966, lived there for a year, and then moved to the US in 1967. He joined the US Navy in 1976 after traveling to Europe. Wow, he's had an interesting life. It was there that he began collecting reports on UFOs and other strange encounters. In 1980, he went to work for his father until he became ill and passed away. Albert then joined the Miami-Dade Police Department as a 911 dispatcher in 1984 and worked there for 35 years. He heard all kinds of stories there, including things involving UFOs and humanoids. I can't wait to hear about that. In the early 1990s, Albert began to concentrate on summarizing only humanoid entity encounters of all kinds. And to date, 2022, he has summarized and collected over, wait for it, this is amazing, collected over 24,000 reports. His database is updated and corrected daily. Albert has written 16 books on chronologies of entity and humanoid encounters. The series of books is called Humanoid Encounters, and it's truly a vital research tool for anyone interested in this phenomenon, researcher or experiencer. And he's also written a book about UFOs and humanoids over Florida, which is called UFOs over Florida. It's absolutely the most comprehensive book of cases in that state. So these can be obtained, of course, both in print and Kindle versions on Amazon. Albert started publishing his books around 2015 and is currently working on his latest volume of Humanoid Encounters, which is from 2016 through 2021. His 15-volume set is chronological and starts over 100 years ago. So I don't know that there's anyone out there who has studied humanoid reports more than our guest tonight. He's absolutely one of the leading experts on humanoid encounters and actually does run an excellent Facebook page on humanoids. It's called Humanoids, UFOs, and Other Strange Phenomena, which has thousands of members and is growing fast. He has been a guest on numerous podcasts such as Arcane Radio, Phantoms and Monsters, Coast to Coast, and many others. And today he is our guest on the Light Gate. So I will just bring him in right now. There he is.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I'm really happy. I'm excited.
We are too.
I've been one of Preston's fans for years.
My goodness.
I got most of his books. Like this one is my favorite one. I was telling him about UFOs over California. This is a good book. I recommend it. A lot of cases there.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Well, I can say the same about you. I have every single volume of Humanoid Encounters. I couldn't live without them. I mean, I know that you've been working on them forever, and
I'm working on my next volume, but there's been some issues with the publishing company and stuff, so I'm in a hole there. And I'm working on building up a either a blog spot or a website where I want to share all my my database, which is close to 30,000 right now. It's a lot.
Oh, amazing.
And hey, thanks to people like you that collect, that study these things and investigate them and share them, because what good is it to investigate a UFO report and then keep it all to yourself and then exchange with other researchers? That's one of my pet peeves. If you want to share, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how many researchers I've talked to who are great researchers, but sit on all their cases. And then there's people who are perhaps not as good at researching and are putting out stuff and a little questionable.
Well, half of the stuff I see on YouTube, or more than half, maybe those, you know how it is. I don't.
Yeah, it's a cesspool. I mean, let's just face it.
I'm telling you, we're being bombarded with disinformation and all this BS, and the good stuff is like left aside, and most people ignore that. So.
Yeah, well, that's what I love about your research, Albert, because you're not overlaying any belief systems or trying to interpret it or doing any what I call shoe fitting and cherry picking. You're the kind of researcher I really like, who just tells it like it is, facts only. This is what happened. This is what the people saw. So yeah, I really appreciate that, and I think.
I think it's important to share. Anybody out there that has an experience like Dolly, share it. Tell people about it. I think it's important that's done.
Yeah, because most people do keep silent.
I don't blame them. Nowadays is more. I think people are more open to that, to what's going on.
One of the reasons I'm absolutely excited that you're in the room with us tonight is you've lived in Miami, and you know Miami well. And
yes.
I know that you're an experiencer as well of sorts, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to get into that.
Yeah. I also know that you worked at the Miami-Dade Metro Center as a dispatcher or a 911 taker, right?
Yeah, Miami-Dade Police as a dispatcher, 35 years.
My father was one of the principal architects that designed that center that you were in. I'm not kidding you.
Is that the one on Miller, 56th Street?
I think so. It's the big glassy one, that's it. Yep.
Now when I retired in 2019, they have moved to another site in Doral.
Oh my God.
It's called Lightspeed. It's a huge building.
Life changes on a dime. It really does. Yeah. What's new today is old tomorrow. That's amazing. Well, okay, I'm dying to know what got you into doing this. I mean, what prompted you? What put you on the path?
I don't know. It's kind of like Preston said. When I was a kid back in Cuba and back in the day in the 60s, I had several experiences which back then I didn't know what I was dealing with. I remember one night sitting out front with my family in front of the house. There used to be a lot of power outages back then. There still are probably. Yeah. I was sitting out front with my family. They were playing dominoes with neighbors and drinking coffee. And I looked up and there was this object hovering across the street over a house. And they all looked at it. They all became a little excited. And then they go up. It's probably the Americans, because that's all the talk that was back then. Bay of Pigs, missile crisis, right. And everybody thought that the Americans were here already. But the object didn't move. It was standing still there. It hovered. It looked like a bell, but it was surrounded with lights, so it moved. And I was the only one out of the group that was really curious. Ooh, what is that? And I followed it. I walked under behind the object, and it stopped over a field behind my house where I lived.
Mhm.
and I stood under it for. I had no idea how high it was, but I don't think it was that high. I stood under it for a while, and then next thing I remember was my mom calling my name. Where have I been? And why are you so wet? I was. It hadn't rained. I was wet for some reason,
Oh my God.
and
Wow.
I don't recall how much time had passed. I don't think my mom told me, but I was gone. I've been missing for a little bit, I guess. Nobody knew where I was.
Okay.
I never been regressed, hypnotically regressed, but I'm sure there was some kind of missing time involved there. And back then I didn't know what a UFO was.
Yeah, that's what I was going to
Later
ask.
on, yeah, later on, I started
Well,
remembering all these incidents that I had as a child that they I put two and two together. I go, wait a minute, what was that?
well, after that incident, did you have any dreams or anything
Yeah,
indicating?
I had a dream, which is one of those dreams that you don't know if it's real or not. It's kind of lucid. I was
Right.
sitting in the kitchen table. This is still back in Cuba in the same house, and there were some figures sitting around me, and they were, to me, they were luminous. I couldn't see they were human shaped, but they were like bright or color, like luminous. I couldn't see any details, and they were talking to me about something that to this day I don't remember what, and it was something important I was supposed to remember. Hopefully, I did. In the future, I remember what it was, but that's one of the dreams I had. Plus, I had other, and that little send you a little file on that. But I had other encounters. There was one probably has to do with paranormal. In the same house, I was maybe 6 years old. I was walking through the hallway. There was a mirror, and I looked up, and there was a face in the mirror looking down at me. And this is one thing that I remember. I remember to this day. It looked like a bearded black beard. To me, it was like a Spaniard. He had one of those
Right.
helmets, black
Yeah.
beard, and he was like
Conquistador. Yeah.
smiling. He's like
Oh
laughing
wow.
at me. And I look, he didn't say a word. Nothing was spoken that I remember. And I looked at it. I became afraid. I ran. I got my mom. They came back, and of course he was gone. But that's one of the memories that I clearly remember. After that, I was afraid of the dark. To sleep in the dark by myself, it was
Oh
terrible
wow.
for a while. Yeah.
Now, when you saw that thing in the mirror, did you feel like it was aware of you?
Because it was looking down at me. I was
Huh.
a little shorter, and he was like looking down, and it had a big grin, not a smile, like a grin. Yeah, it had that black mustache with a beard, and it looked like one of those helmets the Spanish used back, conquistador type.
Yeah.
And in
Conquistador.
Cuba,
You
they
said
were
that,
there
Dolly.
in that area there. I know they were there, but what I saw, I have no idea. I don't have any answers.
So, I mean,
You
do
know?
you think it was spirit related? Like a ghostly thing, or
I think so. I think it was some kind of energy, spiritual energy or something.
that's
Now,
what it sounds like.
I think there's a lot of connections with different type of paranormal things, and there's a lot of paranormal activity involving UFOs too. I believe.
Absolutely. Yes.
Now,
Wow.
you said you had another missing time. Let me see. You sent me something one summer.
And the beach.
Here. Yeah.
Okay, I was at a beach. This is kind of weird because it was an old place. They had an old pier that was falling apart. Nobody walked to the pier. It was like you walk. There's a couple of boards and there were five missing. And in order to get to the end, you had to you know, nobody went out there. It was kind of dangerous. Anyway, I went out by myself. I didn't go to the pier. I was on walking through the dunes. It was kind of isolated back then, that area. And there was, the crabs, how they have holes in the ground.
Yeah.
And I was looking, all of a sudden there were a bunch of holes all over the place, and there were crabs coming out. But these crabs looked like they were giant. They were big. They were like huge eyes, and they were like all over the place. My next memory that I remember, I was standing at the end of the pier, standing there, about ready to fall off. I know my family running, trying to get me off the pier. They had no idea how the heck I got there because I was only 6 and the pier was very long, and it was, like I said, it was falling apart. It took me back. Finally, they got somebody there to get me, and I was. This, I know my father spanked me for sure,
Oh,
but
wow.
yeah, they weren't that too happy. I couldn't remember anything.
Now, did your experiences follow you everywhere you went? In other words, when you left Cuba, didn't go to Spain?
And Spain, I don't remember. I was only there for almost a year. We lived in Madrid, in the capital.
Mhm.
We lived at a guest house with the owners, and we had a room. I don't remember anything happening there. I do remember reading the paper about what they call in Spanish ovnis or platillos voladores, flying saucers,
Mm.
and that caught my attention. Then when we went to New York first, and for some reason they wanted to come to Miami. We did, and I started reading. I remember the first books that I read on the subject were like, remember Frank Edwards,
Mhm.
Sure.
Jack's Ballet, even the Passport to Magonia. That's a book that it really impacted me. Also, The Humanoids it was edited by Donald. This book right here, a classic. The Humanoids.
Oh yeah, Charles Bowen. I've got that book.
Born,
Yeah.
yeah, excellent book, and yeah, and that I started with those two books. I'm fluent. I'm fluent in Spanish and a couple other languages, so I'm able to read Spanish, Italian, Portuguese. So I got books from all over the place here. But that's how I collect information. Personally, I have investigated local cases. I haven't had the resources to go travel different places to do investigations, but a lot of local incidents here in Miami I have investigated. Interesting stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, well, Florida's particularly active. I mean, I looked at that state and there was no way I was going to write about it. It's too many cases.
Look,
So I'm
now
glad
if I try to write that book again, it'll be like double the size or more.
I'm sure.
More cases.
Now, where in Miami were you living when you came to Miami?
I live in Miami now.
Okay.
I live in the little town called West Miami. It's like a little municipality.
Yeah.
That's west of Miami.
Yes.
Small, it's from 57th Avenue to 67th Avenue, and just
Yeah.
like small, but that's where I live now. Pretty urban.
Yeah. Very. Yeah.
Yeah, well, Dolly grew up largely in Florida. She had a lot of her
Yeah. Everglades.
experiences in the farm
Yeah.
in Florida Everglades. Yeah.
It's all built up since I've been there. Our farm has been overtaken, it's been built on. But back when I was there, if you went out to Bird Road all the way past 128th Avenue, and you would have to go up another side road to go to Tamiami, and then go out
Miami
Tamiami.
Airport. Yeah.
Yeah. Tamiami
Now-
and West, Tamiami Road. There were farms out there, and I lived on a farm out there. And it was sort of, there were strawberry farms and there were cattle farms. We had Brahma, and it was near the Shark Tooth Valley, actually.
Yeah.
And I went to Southwest
Valley,
Miami
yeah.
Senior High School.
Oh, Southwest
And,
Miami. Okay.
Yeah, and it was crazy. I mean, but when I first went to Florida, we lived on Biscayne Boulevard, right across
Biscayne,
from
okay.
the bay. Yeah,
I lived on Biscayne too, off of 23rd Street.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Were you there, Albert, during the whole Gulf Breeze wave?
Yeah, I was in
Wow.
Miami. Yeah, definitely. I got the book from Ed Walters.
Right.
There's a lot of controversy with the case, but I think there was some real incidents that occurred up there, because he wasn't the only one involved in sightings and encounters. There were other
100%
independent
agree.
witnesses, many of them, which were documented by different investigators like MUFON and others. Yeah.
Right.
that's
And
amazing.
talking about the Everglades, now they have built so much west that
I know.
but
It's spread out.
Chrome Avenue is still the same. I mean, it's pretty much farms.
Right.
There's some areas that they have gone west, but
Right.
they stopped now because they can't go into the East Everglades. I mean,
Right.
what are they
No,
gonna do?
no, that's national property. Yeah,
Yeah,
federal
right,
land. Yeah.
And there's been several incidents that I've been told about in that area, East Everglades. Strange stuff.
Right. Did they ban airboats out there?
The airboats, as far as I know, I had some family come over a couple of years ago, and I took them over to on the trail Tamiami
Right.
Trail,
Right.
close to almost to Naples, and we went out on in an airboat in the Glades, and they have like airboat tours. So I don't think they've been.
Oh, okay.
Maybe in some places they have
Yeah.
been out,
I think
like in
private use and stuff like
Florida
that.
Bay or something.
I think it's near the Miccosukee Indian villages. I think they banned them. It was probably
Mikusuki,
it.
yeah, they're still there. They got the casino there. Yeah.
Oh my God. See, it wasn't when I was a kid. A lot of my sightings, I used to go out and I had a canoe, small canoe, and I had to walk it over the estuaries and stuff like that, or between Indian head mounds, the big mounds out there. And I used to go digging up Indian mounds looking for stuff, like an archaeologist. And I had my canoe with me because I don't like sawgrass. It'll eat you up. And so I spent a lot of time out there. I've had a lot of you know, out sightings out there as well. And
I drive to the Keys all the time too, and I love that ride.
right.
I usually take not US 1, the other. What's the name of the Card Sound Road down
Yeah,
Card Sound?
yeah,
But talking about incidents there in the Glades, I many people in the police department that I work with knew about my interest, and a lot of them were open about it. They were open about their own encounters. And I
okay.
had several detectives and police officers come up to me and tell me about what
Yeah,
incidents they. There was one sergeant that he was out in one of those narcotic stakeout in the East Everglades.
okay.
This is possibly '70s, early '70s. There's wasn't any cell
Right.
phones or anything
They
like
had
that.
drop zones out there. I know. Yeah.
And they were there sitting in the middle of nowhere in the dark, and all of a sudden they looked up and the stars started blacking out in a boomerang shaped thing. And
Yep.
they looked up and they realized it was a huge
Right.
boomerang,
Right.
dark, flying over
250 feet minimum. Yeah.
the Everglades. They were all
Yeah.
freaking out. I mean, and they
In
were
the
out there.
70s, you say. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
That's
after
my word.
that too, after that, I had other people tell me about Black Point Marina, Black Point.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
There were a lot of incidents there, strangely dealing with Bigfoot, or what they call down here the skunk ape.
Right. The
A
skunk
lot of
ape.
incidents there, and down in the Keys also.
Yep.
Mostly in the '70s, '80s.
Yeah.
I guess because of development and stuff slowed down. But there's still reports. A couple of years before I retired, I was manning the phones in 911, and they had a couple that called, elderly couple, and they say they were driving the car off of Tamiami near Chrome. I mean, they were
Yeah.
pretty isolated still. They were north of Tamiami near the Okeechobee
Okay.
Road in Okeechobee. And they say that a bear came out of the woods in two legs and struck their vehicle.
Oh wow.
And they called the police. And I think they sent a traffic patrol up there because they thought they had run over pedestrians. They didn't find anything, but they said it looked like a bear, but it was very big to them. We have bears down here, but they're small and
Yeah.
black.
They're
Small black
small,
bears,
little black bears. Yeah.
and they go mostly on four legs.
Yeah. There's not a whole lot to eat down there for them. Yeah.
No,
I had one sighting. I was out on a dig and I was getting ready to come back. I was packing up my gear, and I was walking to go to get my canoe, and I felt something over the right side of my shoulder, and it was big, whatever it was behind me. And I slowly turned because it's thinking. I can hear it thinking, and I looked, and it's the bloody reptilian. 10 feet behind me, and I ran. I didn't even think about it.
This is in the Glades.
Yeah. And it had food on its mind, and I made it to my canoe. I had to swim to my canoe, and I didn't even get in it. I just kept paddling away. And I know that it let me go because it could have overrun me at any time. But it was huge.
I had a guy that used to fish west of the turnpike of 58th Street or 25th Street, which is pretty developed now, but back then it wasn't.
Okay.
He was fishing off the side of the road and by a canal.
Right.
And out of the sawgrass, came out what he said was a walking lizard.
Yeah.
With a long neck.
Yeah.
And I talked to him personally. And he just got out of there. He was there with his nephew, and they both took off. And this is in the 90s.
Yeah. Well, this was in like 1974. Okay. And I'm already an experiencer by then. Okay. And when I saw it, and I tried to tell myself at first, was that a bloody alligator on its rear feet? Because they can get big. And I thought, no, they can't stand up. It's impossible. They don't have it. They cannot. And I knew I could hear it thinking food. It was hungry. And I shook for a week. I mean, I really shook for a week. And I thought, I can't meet up with this. I didn't even go back for my gear for a month. I just left it. No.
Interesting. A lot of those reptilian reports do occur, seems out in wilderness areas and not necessarily associated with the UFO, which makes me think that they're not necessarily ETs. I know this, we've talked about this, Dolly.
Yeah.
But perhaps better term, crypto terrestrials. Have you heard that term, Albert?
Yeah, I heard also from RD Six Killer Clark.
Right.
She's written a lot of books though, and I love her. But I heard she's been ill lately. I don't know. I've been trying to contact her, no luck. But anyway, I used to correspond with her, and she thinks that a lot of these reptilians are from underground, under the earth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of reptilian encounters, which most of the reptilians are reported to be underground.
Yeah, I've asked about it since then, with my contacts, and they pretty much said that their home is Earth, and they've been here since the dinosaurs, and they call them sentient beings. That they're not as evolved as a lot of us are, but they are sentient as all get out, and we're here with them.
Which is interesting because it's not just reptilians; it's Bigfoot, dolphins, and other cetaceans are probably sentient to at least a large degree.
Yeah.
Now there's a lot of talk about Dogman and all these different all the cryptids.
I got a couple of reports of that myself. That's what I love about your humanoid books, is because it covers all of these things.
A whole spectrum type of.
So what was your very first report on a humanoid? I mean, what prompted you to want to catalog everybody?
Well, like I said, the book Passport to Magonia, that's one of the first books that illustrated a whole bunch of humanoid encounters. I mean, he has a listing of 900 cases there, and a lot of them are humanoid encounters. Also, the book that I showed you guys earlier, the humanoids by Hanlon, and my interest peaked. And when I read UFO cases, I didn't want to read about lights in the sky, close encounters is the first type of stuff like that. I just looked for humanoid abduction cases, and some of the cases that there were really high strangeness cases. I collect those also.
Wow.
Now, did you ever join MUFON, or I know you had your own case where you sent a letter to APRO after a sighting you and your sister had?
Yeah, I remember that back in the early 70s or late 60s in Miami. I am a member of MUFON now, but just regular member. I don't do any investigation for them or anything like that. There used to be a really active MUFON group here in South Dade. Mary Ann Simmer, but she passed away. Her husband also, and no one took up the gauntlet. I couldn't do it, but there was another investigator here, Virgilio Sanchez Osejo. He wrote the book Underwater UFO Base. I knew him personally. I used to visit him all the time. He used to have meetings in his backyard with UFO enthusiasts. I know we have a lot of them down here, but we're kind of isolated now.
Yeah. Wow.
Wow. So you started collecting all these reports just for yourself, or were you ever thinking about, publishing them?
I never thought I was going to publish them. I will share a lot of my information, my database, different.
Right.
And then somebody said, "Look, you have why don't you write a book about it?" And I didn't want to. And finally, I was convinced. Ash Stanton, he published the books himself, and I ended up doing 16 books.
Yeah. Okay, we have a question.
No, this is just a comment, actually. UFO books, Bigfoot says, Albert, I have almost all the humanoid books. Love them. And thanks for the autographed copy.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely love them. I know at one point your database was free and people could access it at any point.
I wanted to keep it that way. UFO info site, but the owner of that site, he had family problems. His wife passed away. So he had to close UFO info. So I had to remove my cases from there. I wanted to put them back on, but I was told by while I was publishing the books, I couldn't have the cases online for free. So I don't know, but I want, if I can't publish any more books, I'm going to put them back online again. That's what I'm trying to do now.
That's
Yeah,
cool.
well, they're absolutely affordable too. So I think it's only fair that you get compensated, because it's a lot of work. I know how much work it is and I am amazed at how you're able to get these cases from all over the world.
It's a lot of work for years and years, and it's not really. I mean, you're not going to become a millionaire selling UFO books. I mean, maybe in a month I'll get like $200 and $150. So it's really not, but it's something.
That is. Now, do you group them by categories? In other words, like all the really tall,
I have categories, three categories like type A, B, C, E,
Okay.
D, F, G. Then H for recovery of a crash UFO or entity.
Mhm.
Type X, which is a really high strangeness case, not necessarily involving a humanoid. And I have type I, which involve injuries in the part of the witnesses. And type F, which is a psychic connection between a UFO and a witness. Type A is the one that you see humanoids or entities on board a UFO through a window or what have you. Type B, when they land and they exit. Type C, when there's a UFO nearby and there are humanoids here, but they're not seen to go directly inside the UFO, but they're nearby. It's I try to keep them like that.
Wow.
So
cool.
here's
books.
The whole chronology of all your books. And my question is, these go back 100 years. And,
Hundreds, yeah.
I mean, it's amazing how far back these go. Now, these very, very early cases are a little bit different from some of the modern ones. And I was wondering if you could comment on that. Have you seen sort of an evolution in what people report over the years?
Now it's so much complicated. Now it seems like the grays have taken over. Because if you look at the Passport to Magonia database and the Bowen book, there are hundreds of cases there of humanoids, and not one of them describes a gray type entity. And sometimes you wonder, this is in the 60s, 50s,
right?
And not even 70s yet, because in the early 70s, that's when people started reporting so-called grays. I don't even think the Betty Hill and Barney Hill, what they encountered were not really grays. They were taller, they had uniforms, they had slanted eyes, but they were not the short, big-headed grays that people talk about now. It seems like people think that that's the only, all extraterrestrials are the little big-headed grays, and Preston knows that that's not the truth.
That's right. There are different ethnicities of the gray. Yeah. Some are very small and short, and some of them are very, very tall. And over the years, things have shifted with ET anyway, because they have things that is going on in our galaxy and away from us. And
right.
They're moving groups toward us, and then other groups are having to attend to what they got issues with.
And maybe they moved different groups from here to another location and brought different ones here. Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah.
They're all humanoid, which I find interesting, because this is one of the things that sort of kept me out of the field. It all seemed very much like Star Trek to me. I thought, I would expect ETs to be completely different. You remember the movie The Blob? I don't know if you've seen it, but
The Blob, yeah.
Kind of what I was looking for, but that just wasn't the case.
Well, maybe I don't know, maybe the humanoid form is a universal thing. I don't know.
It is. That's why I wanted Preston to call the book Symmetry. We all have DNA, and I don't know how many encounters that you've talked to witnesses and all, but a lot of them, a lot of people come back with the message that they're us, we're them, we're all one, and our DNA is universal throughout our universe and our solar systems. And it's important to remember that they are like us, and they've been coming to humans time immemorial, all the way back, even tens of thousands of years before anybody knew what anything was, and people don't
I
think
think,
about that. They've always been.
I think they might have interacted with other civilizations here on Earth before ours that were here before,
Absolutely, yes.
and they something happened. There was a catastrophe, either a meteorite or comet, something, and they were wiped out. There were some remnants, but those you can find all over places in the world.
Right.
Well,
Bolivia.
how common do you think humanoid encounters are? Because researching myself, talking to people, almost nobody reports it to anyone. They don't call the police. They don't call the Air Force. They don't even know what MUFON or NUFORC is. So here you've got thousands upon thousands of them. What was it, 20, 30,000?
I'll give you an example. Back in 89, I was working the midnight shift at 911 desk, and a security guard called 911. This case is in one of my books. This is back in 89, I think December. And he said that he was patrolling back then, no cell phone, so he was calling from a payphone. Dial 911, the emergency number. He said there were 3 strange trespassers in the parking lot. This is about 3 o'clock in the morning. And we asked him, okay, what do they look like? We're going to send the police. Oh, they're about 7 feet tall, and their eyes look like cats, and they're skinny, long arms. This is security guard. So this guy was so afraid that he actually called 911 when he saw the police were sent immediately. Well, I don't know if immediately, but they did go. They did file a report. I used to have a copy of the report. I know what happened to it. But they did believe this guy, and they did search the area back then. This is off of 136th Street and US 1.
Yeah. Oh,
back
wow.
then there was a shopping center here and a field on the other side, and they searched that field. They didn't find anything. They searched the parking lot, but he said there were 3 beings almost 7 feet tall. And he called the police to report it, and had another lady called. This is in 94. She called the police because at night she looked at, there was a mango tree in her backyard, and when she looked, she said it looked like a gargoyle was standing next to the tree or trying to climb on the tree. She said on the phone that it looked like the devil. It was like a demon. I guess that's what a gargoyle looks like. I guess.
I had a gargoyle jump out of a tree at me up in Pine Mountain. I was coming home from the base, and it's raining, and I'm driving down this road with no lights, and it's pouring rain, and I'm trying really hard to stay on the road. I'm tired, and I see this tree lighting up in my headlights. I know where I am, and I see something up in the tree, and I'm thinking, what is that? And the next thing I know, as I go under the tree, it right under my windshield. It came to hit hard, and it scratched the windshield with nails, and it was on my hood, and I slammed on my brakes, and it slid down the front of my truck and hit the ground. At which point I went, and I kept going. I ran right over it. I don't.
Amazing. How big was it?
It was probably 3 feet tall, and it probably weighed about 85 pounds. It was huge, and it had little floppy wings, and it looked just like a black gargoyle. It was huge, and it covered my entire windshield when I hit it. It left scratches, and I went home. I lived like two blocks from that, up on the mountain in a log cabin, and I sat on changed my clothes, got my shotgun, pumped it, and sat on my porch for the rest of the night waiting for it. And it never showed up. I was like, okay. It scared me. It went, and this is one I told my mom about. And she loves gargoyles. And she said, that was a gargoyle. That was a gargoyle. Wow.
Weird.
So Albert, with all these humanoid reports, there are Bigfoot and reptilian stuff, which could probably be categorized as crypto-terrestrials. And some, perhaps interdimensional time travelers. I mean, people start marching out all these theories. I'm wondering, are you convinced that most of these humanoids are extraterrestrial in the classic sense? People like us, biological beings?
I think a lot of them are interdimensional, actually. Or they use dimensions to travel from different places from here to there, from distant planets. They might use wormholes, like the movie Interstellar. Who knows? Maybe they come in through another dimension, and then they go into our dimension briefly, and then they disappear, going back to their dimension. And they indeed are extraterrestrial, but a lot of the crypto beings, lesser developed, I think they're also not necessarily extraterrestrial, but they're interdimensional, that for some reason are able to break into our realm briefly, and or sometimes longer than briefly, and are seen, and then they disappear back into their dimension where they came from. And sometimes humans are able to go into their dimension, and sometimes we never come back. That's what there's a lot of so many reports missing 411 in the woods. I think that's one of the reasons.
Right. Well, I want to pull up a picture here that you sent to me about a case from 1916 in the UK.
Yeah.
This is
It's
funny. I had a dream just about this not too long ago. I was kind of struck by the image. This is different from what a lot of people report, and such an early report.
It's strange because it's just like you see it, a platform with men in uniform standing around it. I know it was back in 1916 during the First World War, and I have a write up with a report, but I can't send it through here. But that's what they saw. There was no sign of engines or any supporting platforms or anything. It was just flying through the air like that. I mean, this is one of those cases which just doesn't make any sense.
I wonder if this is us doing reverse engineering, but it's so darn long ago.
Yeah.
I question that.
It was 1914, you said?
16,
I think 1916.
Yeah. In the UK. What do you think, Dolly?
I think that the craft went, they can, have you ever seen those leaves? You touch them, they turn there, you can see through them. That's because there's something in the skin of, there's something in the skin. It's light cells and they change, they alter suddenly. The craft, ET craft are like cuttlefish. They have arrays in the skins of them. And the being that controls the craft can make it cloak itself, or it can make itself transparent. The mainframe of it is still there. You can see the mainframe, but it's like everything else disappears. And I think you're looking at a craft that's opened up so you can see through it, and they're just looking like they're touring around.
This one is somewhat reminiscent of the Father Gill sighting in Papua New Guinea.
Yeah. There were men standing outside waving at the witnesses.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't think there was any interaction here, but interesting. I mean, what Dolly said, it makes sense. Maybe they decloaked temporarily so
they just
for some reason
made everything transparent so everybody could see 360 around them.
Or
they must have been looking at something important. I wonder what was going on the ground that they were watching. That because things catch their attention sometimes, and they'll go out of their way to watch things.
I don't know. The place where he was seen was called Alderberg. I don't know if there was anything going on there at the time, but I know World War II was on, but World War II was mostly in mainland Europe, not in the UK.
Yeah, that's amazing. They can do that.
Yeah, it's a very interesting case, and what kind of struck me is that it predates the modern age of UFOs. Yeah. People weren't even really thinking extraterrestrials way back then, or humanoids. No. I mean, the amount of humanoid reports compared to today, it's almost non-existent. So
it's hard to find a newspaper. Some of the old newspaper accounts that I have found have been or shared with me. They describe encounters with entities, but they're all put in a ghost category or specter. Whatever they saw a glowing white shaped entity in the field was a ghost. Back then, it's a ghost. I'm talking about the 1914, 15, 20, maybe even 20.
Not any other way to understand it.
So maybe there were encounters, but they were misinterpreted. But
what do you think about the sudden onslaught of humanoid and UFO reports with the modern age of UFOs? Because it seems unprecedented. If you go back in history, it's just not there.
What's interesting is the Las Vegas case from back this in May 1st. There's
Right.
been a lot of disinformation thrown out there. They didn't really take a film or a picture of the alien.
Right.
The officers, what they captured was some kind of object. It was probably a fireball or something, but
Meteor.
something landed, because sometimes maybe these craft, they use that type of event to camouflage themselves and come in when everybody's looking at the meteorite. They're landing over here, so we get distracted. But this is one of my theories. But anyway, something landed in their backyard, and they called the police. They called 911, and they said there were one of the neighbors said there was a large round thing with lights, and inside there was an 8-foot tall creature, or even taller, with big eyes. And then there was another one outside. Now, I wish I could talk to this kid that reported that, but it seems like it was a very interesting case.
Yeah, well, hopefully we'll get some good reporting on it, because there's so much disinformation about it.
There's a lot of BS.
Which is a huge problem in this field.
Yeah.
I want to bring up another unusual humanoid picture that's from 1947.
Villa Santina, Italy. Yeah.
So
one of the classic early C3s, or Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And it's funny that this is the drawing made years later, after there have been other drawings, but this is more accurate. The creatures, they were humanoid, of course. He looks like he's wearing a helmet or something, but it's the skin tone is kind of greenish tint, and the eyes are like a cat also, like slit. And this guy, he tried to approach them, but he was out in the mountains, and he had one of those. It was near a glacier or something. He had an ice pick, and he went like this, and he got struck by some kind of beam that knocked him out he was laying on the ground for a couple hours. Yeah. He messed up his vision and all that, but maybe they misinterpreted his action, because you can't go run up to somebody with an ice pick in your hand.
Right. They would have stopped him.
Yeah.
When I look at that, I see a cat creature. They sort of look like that. And what he thought was a green tint was probably the gray that in certain light looks green. If he was up on a glacier, the blue light hitting the gray skin might have given it a green cast to it, But they have big cat eyes, and their nose is blunt like a cat, and they have facial hair, and they cut their hair like that. They'll try to look as human as possible, and so I'm pretty sure you saw a cat creature. Yeah.
Alrighty.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting case, to say the least, and there's just so many of them. I think it's far more common than people realize, because there was a quote from J. Allen Hynek, which always kind of comes to mind, that he said 1 in 40 people have had an onboard experience, which seemed to me far too common. But that's when I started asking everyone I knew, and I didn't have to ask 40 people. And I know that the cases you cover are not just face-to-face encounters, they're onboard experiences as well. So I'm wondering what your take is on the whole onboard experience.
I think eventually a lot of the people that had a close encounter with an entity or a UFO, it turns out that they were really abducted also. When later on they start remembering, they have memories, flashes, and they might remember that there was something else occurred. And most witnesses nowadays are like Dolly, they're repeat witnesses. They had several encounters throughout the year.
Yeah. There's a question. Preston, you read it.
It says, I have a question for Albert. This is from CT Guitar Guy 85. What about Mothman? Is that interdimensional? Have there been more modern sightings of Mothman? It's a good question.
I think Mothman was indeed some kind of interdimensional creature that for some reason made his appearance up back in Point Pleasant. As far as modern sightings, there have been a lot. Like the Chicago flying creature reports that started cropping up since 2016. There are hundreds of those already. And lately, I have a connection in Puerto Rico, Puerto Rican researcher, Jorge Martin, and he's been reporting a lot of last year, starting 2020 through last year to 2021, a lot of flying humanoid encounters down there lately now, and gargoyle type creatures also have been seen. I have several of those cases in my latest summary. Preston, do I have your email?
I think so. If not, I can
Okay.
certainly give it to you. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to send you my a file so you can take a look at it. You feel free to use it. You like.
Yeah, I think I find the
Yeah.
Mothman case pretty interesting because it kind of came out of the blue, but then it sparked a lot of other people reporting these kinds of things. And looking into it, when I was writing UFOs over New Mexico, I got a case of these guys driving down the highway and something swooped over their car, and they said it looked like an owl man. And they later it came to their house. So this was a follow-up, which often happens, as you know, Albert, and one encounter can precede others.
Yes.
And looking into it, there's quite a few of these winged creature sightings.
How big are they? I'm curious. How big are the Mothmen? How tall?
Well, the ones that have been seen in Chicago and lately, they're pretty tall, over 6 feet tall, close to 7 feet.
There were recent ones in Chicago. Yeah. It's very, very odd. I don't know if those are directly associated with UFOs, and I don't know,
but a lot of them have been seen near O'Hare Airport for some reason. Why? I have no idea.
Well, there was a flying humanoid that was pestering LAX airport, and people were thinking it was perhaps, one of the guys with the jetpack. And then apparently, no, it wasn't, because other people saw it and it was moving far too quickly. But yeah, a lot of cases of flying humanoids even without wings.
A lot of those, yeah. Just somebody flying through the air without any means of propulsion or anything like that, which is very interesting.
So have you, Albert, seen humanoids other than, what you saw as a kid, personally?
I don't know if I included this in what I sent you one time. Sometimes when you have an experience like that, at that moment, you don't take it in completely. You go, oh, okay. And then maybe a couple of days later or 2 days later or whatever, you go, wait a minute. What was that? What did I see? I remember one time I was visiting my mom and I was backing out. She lived in Coral Gables. It's a lot of wooded streets there. So I was backing up out of her complex, and I looked, and it wasn't even night. It was like maybe late afternoon, but it was an area there wasn't that much traffic. So I looked, and there was somebody standing in the middle of the street. And when I looked at it, I said, well, what a strange guy. He was tall, humongous, all in white. And he looked like he had his back was his shoulders were very wide, and he turned and he looked like he had huge wings, white in color. Everything was white, and he kind of avoided my looking at me, but I looked, and then I didn't think much about it, and I just drove away. And now I'm convinced that I saw something, some type of humanoid.
Well, I have a question for you then. Have you ever cataloged any of the reports of Anunnaki and what they look like?
Somebody that have reported.
In other words, like from Persia and, Mesopotamia and all those areas, the Anunnaki were an actual, quote, people that were living there, but they weren't from here. And they're in hieroglyphs and everything. And there are other hieroglyphs from different parts of the world that have pictures of Anunnaki on them. And what you're describing to me, because I've seen them, is an Anunnaki. And I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, I knew Dolly was going to say this.
Well, maybe, because I have read about the Anunnaki and how they came to Earth thousands of years ago.
Yeah, they're very tall. Really tall. The young ones aren't as tall. They're about 7 feet tall. They're like tall whites. They get taller as they get older. Okay, it's a genetic trait of theirs, and they get massively huge, and they have big wings. They really do.
Well, that's what this guy looked like, and he was big. He was very big.
And if he was wearing white, that sounds like an Anunnaki to me. So.
And I just drove away. I didn't even. Back then, I didn't. I guess I couldn't react.
Have you talked to your family about, have other members of the family had encounters involving missing time? I know your sister.
my a couple of my sons have had experiences. My sister also. My mom, she's not well now, but she never did recall anything. My grandmother, though, she used to tell me stories about incidents that would occur to people on the middle of nowhere in Cuba and the farms. They will go out and they will encounter different type of beings. Or my grandfather he will go out there on their horse, and he was followed once by a huge ball of fire that closed behind him. And there are many other reports, but for my family, like I said, my sister and my sons, they're interested on it, but not as much as me. Like when I don't know, when I'm gone, hopefully my database will be in somebody's hands that will put it to use.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
amazing.
doesn't what you're saying doesn't surprise me, because when you're showing, as I'm sure you know, all the markers of a contactee, and it is generational. So another question I would ask you, because it sounds like you fit that category, is have you had a lot of psychic experiences in terms of dreams that come true or astral projection? Or,
I have a lot of like what do you call that? When something happens at the same time, or
Deja vu.
deja vu and stuff like that, and then synchronicity all the time.
Yeah,
for some
That would
reason.
make you- that would a lot. Everybody's psychic. Okay, we all have the ability, but people who have encounters generally are showing more signs, latent signs of it, and ongoing signs of it before, during, or after an encounter. It's a corresponding thing with that, you know. So I find it very interesting.
Some of my dreams have been so lucid that it feels like I've been there, or I go there, and I have had dreams, not all the time, but
Yeah.
a couple of dreams involving UFOs actually.
Yeah. Do you ever go home to Cuba in your dreams? And you're like standing there and you're actually replaying a moment?
I do not dream about going back. I haven't done that. If I did, I don't remember it.
Okay.
But I do dream a lot when I was in the Navy, though.
Okay.
I was there for 4 years. I was a communications technician, radioman. I had a top secret clearance. And I do dream once in a while going back to the ship for some reason.
Okay, that's significant. What kind of ship were you on?
A destroyer tender.
Okay.
We're out of Mayport, Florida.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's amazing. How about that?
Well, here I want to put up a question which is a little bit off topic, but it's from chat, and all questions are welcome. So, there's been a lot of interesting developments in the field with disclosure and whistleblowers. And Stephen Greer has sort of helped spearhead that to a degree. And you don't have to answer this, but would like you to ask what Albert thinks about Steve Greer. You feel free to pivot in any way. I don't generally comment on other researchers. I think he's doing some important work. I'll leave it at that. But thought I'd give you the opportunity.
I mean, he has exposed a lot of people to the phenomenon and opened doors here and there. But after that, I haven't heard too many good things about him. But I don't have, I don't have a personal opinion right now, on him.
Yeah,
you have to give everybody the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah,
somebody personally, you can't comment on them. It's not okay. It's gossip.
I don't know him personally. I can't comment negative on him because I haven't had any experience with him. But
yeah, I have actually. I met him. He was very kind to me, and I joined CSETI, and we did use his protocols to call down UFOs, and it worked. We formed a little group in LA. So yeah, I've been a number of times. We've had a few interesting discussions. But yeah, I think he is doing some important work in the field, and I have to give kudos to anyone who has the courage to step into this field at all, because you know what I mean.
And be so exposed, yeah, really.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it draws fire too. I mean, if you're if you're working toward this and you're trying to bring a disclosure to people and explain things to them, it draws the wrong people looking at you, and they'll come after you, and they do. And that might be part of his problem. You never know, you know?
Right. Well, we have to take a quick station break just to let everyone know that you're watching The Light Gate. This is episode number 8. I'm Preston Dennett. My lovely co-host is Dolly Safran. Our guest is Albert Rosales, author, experiencer, and researcher. And you're listening to the UFO Paranormal Radio Network and United Public Radio Network. We're also streaming on 107.7 and 105.3 FM from the beautiful city of New Orleans, and on several other New Orleans.
Yeah, New Orleans.
New Orleans, yeah.
New Orleans.
Yeah.
I got to get that Cajun accent down. New Orleans. But yeah, so we're on several other platforms, and thank you for joining us. We're now in our second hour. We're going to be answering some more of the questions from chat. So if you have any, please put them in caps. That makes it easier for us. But I've got another case, Albert, that you sent us a little picture of. So I wonder if you could comment about it, because this one is interesting to me because it involves so many different types of ETs.
Yeah. This is one of my favorite cases. This occurred back in the fall of '73, an important year. It had occurred in November in France. And I remember the location, but there was a couple in their car, like what couples do in their vehicles alone in the middle of nowhere, near a field. And they saw some kind of object land, like a dome in a field. About maybe 300 feet from them, there was a fence. And it landed, and some kind of hatch opened, a door, and 3 short figures came out. These were not typically gray, but they were short, big-headed humanoids wearing silvery suits, very tight-fitting, and they walked around. Well, and then suddenly 2 more figures stepped out of the UFO, and these were like some 2 figures that resemble like the tall Nordics. They were tall males, and they had long blonde hair, and they were wearing tight-fitting blue suits. They stood in front of the object. They didn't walk anywhere. And thirdly, and most weirder of all, something else came out of the object. It was something that looked like a big ape, according to the witnesses. They didn't say Bigfoot. They say big ape. And this big ape stood right next to the door of the entrance to the UFO, as if it was guarding the area, or guarding, or keeping a lookout. Maybe it was some kind of bodyguard or something. Who knows? After a while, the little ones went back, entered the ship, followed by the 2 tall blonde ones, and finally the ape-like creature went in behind them. Then it took off, and in that field they found several type of footprints and a lot of evidence. This happened back in November 1973.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think about the whole Bigfoot UFO connection? Because I got a case personally, and that's what made me look into it. Of course, what's his name? Stan Gordon, Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania, yeah.
Yeah, he's really focused on that.
Yeah, I think there's a definite connection between Sasquatch, Bigfoot, skunk ape, and UFOs. And I believe that the Sasquatch is an intelligent being, is not an animal.
Right.
So
Wow.
don't go out hunting Bigfoot, because they're probably more intelligent than we are. I know for sure a lot of them have telepathic capabilities, and some of them can become invisible. All kinds of stuff.
Yeah, that's exactly what I've heard, which is, I think, important, because this would explain a lot why they're not seen as often. And people say, there's a lot of evidence. I mean, it's not just footprints. There's
maybe they use portals to travel also. Some of them, they disappear in plain sight, or come out of nowhere, or then they disappear.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah. Okay, here's a comment I'm just going to bring up because it's kind of cool. Giorgio Piacenza says, in the 90s, I saw a huge orb over the Chrome Avenue area.
That area, Chrome Avenue, has been a lot of sightings there.
Yeah, Miller Road too, actually.
Miller
Just
Road,
so you know, yeah.
I wonder why Florida is so darn active, because I know California has the most reports, but we have the most people. And I think Texas and Washington are also, Texas, I can understand, it's huge. Washington, well, that's where New Fork is centered, so they get a lot of reports. But I know Florida's right up there in the top 10.
That's
Michigan.
The field guidelines of the planet are very strong in the state of Florida and Texas. The 33rd parallel is probably the strongest field guideline, and then going dead south from that, they get stronger and stronger. Going north, it's a little bit different there, a little bit wishy-washy up in the north, even though they write them. So yeah, it's literally a good place for them to go. The magnetics there is real easy for them to fly.
Well, like Preston said, California is like number one for some reason. I guess, like you said, the more people there, it's a large, state. And Florida, and then Texas. Yeah, Texas is a lot of stuff there too.
Yeah.
Have you noticed certain areas that are more active than others in terms of worldwide?
Pennsylvania, for sure. I mean, that place is nonstop. UFOs, Sasquatch, all kinds of paranormal events, contact, all kinds of stuff going on there. Giant bird sightings, pterodactyls, who knows? All kinds of stuff.
Yeah. Well, the human reports are all over the world. I mean, there's not going through your books on this, I don't think there's a single country that hasn't had reports.
There are reports for most countries. For some reason, in Africa, a lot of the smaller countries there, like West Africa, are very low in reports. South Africa, it's a lot of reports. Mozambique, Zimbabwe, in that area, Angola, there's some reports from there. And you go north, Central Africa, very quiet also, except for Nigeria a little bit. There's been a lot of reports from there. And Uganda, some reports from there. And then you go north, and you do see a lot of reports coming from Morocco, Egypt. Not too much you hear from Libya, Algeria, or Tunisia. Some, but not almost nothing. But I've been trying to locate different reports from areas that, for some reason, you never hear reports come from out of.
You have to go where nuclear capabilities are, literally.
Yep.
If there are nuclear plants, nuclear things going on, anything with nuclear, they're gonna be way more reports because they watch that.
Well, and like in Africa and Nigeria, Congo, they had the uranium mines there, and they had UFO sightings there.
You're exactly right. Yep.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of sightings over mines. I noticed that was a pattern.
Yeah.
In schoolyards, I think. Yeah, when I was doing that, I think you sent me a couple. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
That's definitely a draw for.
I was listening to your last episodes of the strange effects on people, UFOs, and most of the times I know the cases because I've been around so long. But one case I didn't know about, that was the last one, the one from the Mojave Desert, about the guy that went out there and he saw a UFO land, and then he found something, a glowing mass on the floor. Very interesting, and I have never heard of that case before.
Yeah. Every now and then I surprise you.
Yeah,
I got that other one with the kid who shot at the Bigfoot.
Yes, and there's even a newspaper report on it. I was really nicely surprised because that report. Thank you.
All right. Well, here is another kind of interesting question, which comes from Donna's Happy Hour. And I like this question. And the question is, does anyone know if reptilian can shapeshift? And this question intrigues me because I do know of cases. One comes to mind, which actually I think is from Florida, if I'm correct, where a lady was at a gas station and saw this beautiful man leaning up against her car in kind of a seductive way. And it's not her habit to pick up strangers, but she felt compelled to. Long story short, went home and became intimate and looked at the mirror and saw that it wasn't a man at all. It was a gray. So I'm thinking, that's a hypnotic projection, perhaps.
Yes. Yeah. They're not shape-shifting, but they are giving you an idea of they let you see what you want to see. In other words, they want to scare you, and they read your mind, and they can send you in the direction they want you to go.
I have a couple cases from reptilians that they do change from being a reptilian to a human type. And then when you first see him, it's a human, very tall human type person. But then you look back again, then it's a reptilian now with a long tail and huge.
I have an opinion about that.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's going to like what I say at all, but I'll tell you that there's factions out there that are not exactly on the up and up in the world. There's definitely a black ops, a cabal of sorts worldwide, and they have the ability to give you 70 holographic images and then change them right before your very eyes. They like to mess with you, and I think that's what people are starting to see. That they're propagating the idea that they're shape-shifting when they're really not. You're seeing a projected image, and it's disconcerting,
I guess to
That's my opinion.
misinformation, throw people off.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah. Well, I hope.
They're practicing on everybody to see how much you'll buy and you won't buy. Humans are pretty good at trying to discern BS, okay? And I think that they've been working on the human population for a long time to see what they'll be swayed into, okay? And they do have 70 holographics, and they do use it on us. So,
Well, as long as our government isn't reptilian, I think we're fine. Because people talk about that, and this is, I think, important to mention because it's important. This is why I like your research, Albert. You just lay it out. It's not wild speculation. There's so much wild speculation in this field, and I would include that there. So
they always said that the royal family were reptilians or reptilians. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I don't.
Yeah, of course.
I
don't
suppose
believe
anything's
it.
possible. Here, I'll bring up. Let me see if I can pull up this other slide you sent me. It's going to take me just a second. Let me see here. No, that's the one we already have because there's. Oh, here it is. Doon. Sorry, I should have had this ready, but this is an interesting case, which struck me because there's so many like this, which I would call the Michelin men. I just covered a case in France involving a professor who saw guys just like this coming out. And I know of another case in France. I think there's several cases here in the U.S.
Several in France and Spain also. Yeah. This particular image is from a case in Brazil. And the interesting part is it occurred last year in July 2022. So it's less than a year ago. It occurred at in the state of Rio Grande do Norte in Brazil. And there was a businessman that he was out returning from somewhere, and he saw a couple of beings. One was about 7 feet tall. The other one was short, like that, 4 feet tall. But they looked the same. They looked like they had rubber, around their body, like a tire made out of like a Michelin man. And the tall one had like a visor, and the latter one had 2 holes for where the eye should be. And he saw them in the field, and he stopped the car, and they disappear. He didn't see a UFO, but he definitely saw the 2 Michelin men.
I want everybody
the drawing.
Homework. Yeah. I'm going to give everybody homework tonight, okay? I want you all to start looking at the type of robots that are in operation right now, autonomous robots, military, everything. They have the ability to build these guys. They have some that are so agile, they can chase you up a mountain and lickety split. They have all kinds of weird shapes, weird designs, and everything. And they're using them, and they pick different places around the planet to deploy them to see how they're going to act in different situations. And I'm having a funny feeling about this. I think that might be what they're looking at.
Well, the Michelin man type has been seen for years.
I know that they've had
the 50s.
Yeah, since the 40s, 50s, they've been working on this. So, not kidding.
Oh.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that they are all over the world. This is just a comment from Janice Connett, who says, "Wow, just went to Amazon to see all of Albert's books. A treasure trove of reading. Thank you, Albert."
Thank you.
Cool.
Yeah, the chat room is just buzzing about your research. It's really quite inspiring. So you've been at this for so many years.
Long time.
Do you ever get to the point where you're like, I just need a break? I'm living and breathing. You know what I mean? I sometimes feel that way, but then I'm right back in.
That's what happens to me. I go, no, I got to take a break. Maybe I let it go for 3 or 4 months, but then I'm right back into it, full blast.
Are you working right now, or you're retired and you're doing this because you love it?
I'm retired and just doing this. I used to do it when I was working too, but
Yeah.
lesser.
Now, do you go out to like the different cons and stuff like that, the conventions, and talk about your books or anything like that?
No,
Oh,
no. I do podcasts and stuff like this, but I haven't got. I was supposed to go to one in Las Vegas a couple years ago, and it was canceled. So then I did go to Las Vegas last year. Had a good time there. I actually went down to Area 51. That area.
Ooh. Did you see the black mailbox?
I saw that, and I saw
Awesome.
the gate, and it was not a black SUV. It was a white SUV on top of the hill, looking down. I went on a tour. A guy drove me and my sister over.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, here's another question, which I think we've already kind of covered a little bit, but I'll say it again. It's from Doxy, and they're asking, do you think that they show us themselves as they think we think they look like? Okay, that's a little tongue twister there.
Interesting question. There's been reports in which actually people have encountered supposedly human-like aliens. I could think of a couple from Russia, and they've been told that the reason we look this way because we don't want you to see our true form. I mean, I don't know how accurate that case was, but it's been a couple reports like that coming out of Russia. And I don't know, maybe sometimes, like Dolly said, there's a holographic imagery.
Yeah, 7D image that they're broadcasting. Yeah. If anybody knows about 7D technology, the Chinese love it. They've got it on street corners. It looks like a giant animal's coming out at them, and everybody's, if you've seen it for the first time, you go, oh my God, what is this? You can have whales, flying in the air around buildings. That people have seen these movies. They can make you believe anything with these things.
I've seen those videos. Yeah, they're pretty cool.
Yeah.
And for that matter, when someone sees an ET, they don't necessarily perceive it correctly because your own belief system kicks in.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, screen memories kind of are connected to this.
Right.
You will see kind of what you expect to see, and people will walk away from an encounter thinking, well, that was an owl.
Right.
Or a deer. And I'm not sure
because you try to rationalize it, what you saw.
We have an inner dialogue. I mean, when we're having conversations with people and they're talking to us, we're still running a dialogue in our heads. And a lot of times people don't understand what they're saying to them because they're overlaying it with what they're thinking. And your ability to see, feel, and hear things is all in that. And if somebody's describing something to you or trying to show something to you, you could actually see something different than what they told you or showed you. It's a human thing. It's a trait that we have. And it just depends on your state of mind when that happens.
Yeah, well, that's why, Albert, your database is so important, because I think now we have enough cases to say that, yes, grays look like grays. This is their true appearance. Nordics. Do you get a lot of praying mantis type?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, a lot of them claim that the praying mantises are the head of the whole thing, or the top dogs, or the boss.
Right.
Some of them know it's not the mantises, is the tall Nordics. Some of them know it's the grays, though. You don't know. I think there's a confederation of different races working together.
Yeah, they don't really have a government. They all really do work together. They have consensus. People like to liken them to ant thinking, but it's not true. They're psychic. They hear each other think. They know the truth of one another, and they work together that way. And they don't have people who are authorities over anybody. They allow those with the most experience, the most knowledge, to help everybody decide what the consensus is and what they're going to do. And the experience always wins. What they're talking about.
Well, here's another comment, which is kind of interesting. I don't think this is about the recent case in Vegas, but it's related to that. David H. Altman is saying, has Albert ever heard of any 8 to 10 foot tall humanoid cases in Vegas? No, before you answer.
Only the one we just talked about earlier, the one in this year, May 1st, I think, in Vegas.
There are some reports of ETs being seen in places you would never expect. And I know that there's a number of in casinos.
Casinos, yeah.
Which gas stations. I mean, I've heard all over the place, but this brings to mind a question for me is what's the tallest humanoid that you report you've collected? I think the tallest I ever got was a praying mantis. And I have 2 that the witnesses swear up and down they were 15 foot tall. One guy's he's a Navy medic. I tried to talk him down a little bit because I'm like, listen, Kevin was his name. That sounds a little tall to me. Are you sure? He says, listen, I'm 6 foot tall. And I interviewed him face to face and several times. He's subject to one of my books. And he's like, it was easily twice as tall as me. I talked to another lady. She's 9 foot tall. There was a teacher in Illinois who swears up and down the praying mantis she saw was 15 feet tall. And she measured it against the street light. She watched it walk by under it. So I'm wondering how tall do you think they get?
I was just looking up some cases from Peru from an investigator over there, Dr. Shoei, and he spoke about several cases of giants, more than 4 meter tall, right. 5 meters. In 2014, I got a report directly from Spain from the one of the witnesses. They encounter this creature who looked like a huge robot, though. He was wearing some kind of uniform, had metallic, but they said it was at least 8 meters tall. Now, what is 8 meters in feet?
24.
3 feet, yeah. Oh my God, 2 1/4, almost 3 feet.
So, and there are other reports from Russia in the 1990s, 90, 91. Yeah. It was a huge wave back then over there of either even taller cyclopean humanoids.
120. I just can't even fathom 24 foot tall. There's giants on Earth. I think the evidence for giants on Earth back in historical times is pretty persuasive, but I don't even think they were that tall. The skeletons they were finding.
If you got to imagine somebody that tall, I mean, their ship must be huge too, but I don't know.
So what about, on the opposite spectrum, because Dolly and I were talking about this, I think just today, miniature humanoids. And I know there was a huge spate of reports in Malaysia involving, less than a foot tall.
For some reason, in Malaysia, there's been a lot of reports, especially in the 70s and 80s, of what they call tiny humanoids. Maybe only about 10 inches tall or less.
Yeah.
And some of these humanoids were armed and they wore uniforms and they were kind of aggressive. I'm going to send you the image, Preston, of the Spanish case. Want me to send it to you in Facebook directly, or?
Yeah, if you can send it on Messenger.
Messenger, okay.
I can pull it up from there.
I'm going to send it to you. It's interesting because there's a drawing of the entity and a tree. Let me find Facebook in a minute. Sometimes
love you, Dolly and Preston. Thank you, Penny.
Love you back.
Yeah, it's interesting how tiny these things. I did a whole study on little tiny ETs. There was one where a lady had a UFO fly into her bedroom and actually landed, and tiny little ETs came out. And I kind of discarded it, but going through the literature, there's a number of them like this.
Keel wrote about a case like that. A lady in New York, I think. Oh no, in Washington, Seattle, Washington. A craft went in and landed on the table, and little people came out.
Yeah, I had when I was on board once. They brought in 5 or 6 people, for being checked out. In one of them had people with them from ET side of it, and they walked them through another door, and I was watching because this person seemed to be out of it, and I had nothing better to do, and I'm curious as all get out. So I followed, and I went into one corridor, and I'm following him, and I went into this big room, and they laid him out on a table, and a big glass shield came over him, and it seemed to gas up, and I was leaning on the back wall, and I was told I can stay there, but I can't react, and I can't move from where I'm at, no getting close to it, nothing. I'm like, okay, fine, I'm good, and I'm watching this human shrink inside this glass capsule. And it took about 3.5 hours. I was glued, I could not move. I was shocked. And he went from about a 5.5 foot human being all the way down to less than 12 inches tall. And another door across the room opened up, and these small beings came in the door and walked over. They dropped the table all the way to the floor. They helped him get up. They wrapped him and walked him back out through the door. Now, by this time, I'm wall-eyed, my jaw's on the floor. And I'm just like, I can't believe what I just saw. And the craft is entity. It's a live craft, okay? And it can talk. And I'm like, what did I just witness? What is this? And he said, there's a micro universe and a macro universe. And he said, there are beings who come up to ours and work with us and then go back down to theirs. And I said, how is this possible? And he said, it's a dimensional shifting thing that they do that helps them bring them back into their own size. And it was beyond me at that age. I was a young woman. I was only in my 20s, and I was in dead shock. And I still live with that for the rest of my life. I haven't seen it again, but I know it exists. And I know that there are beings who are less than 12 inches tall.
And you were on board a UFO when
Yeah.
you have been abducted? Okay.
No,
Yeah.
I am a pilot. I pilot the craft. I was taught.
Okay.
You don't know about my story, do you?
I read the book Symmetry.
Yeah.
I do. Okay.
Okay,
And
yeah.
there was another book that he mentioned you also. Yeah, that you pilot a UFO or something like that.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because Dolly, I interviewed her about that. I was doing research into this sort of thing, the sizes of ETs, and because Betty Andreasen described that exact thing. She saw someone get shrunk down. They called it deopulating, which I thought was interesting. But yeah, so I'm going to bring up that picture you sent over via Messenger. There it is. So that's the giant.
Yeah, 8-meter tall creature, Spain, 2014.
That is off the chart.
Did it just stand there the whole time, or?
According to the witnesses, after they ran from it, it kind of followed them for a while, and then when they were running away, they hit like what they say, they felt like they were being encased in spider webs. Ew. Everything got and after that, the creature disappeared, and the spider webs also. So it was something weird. It's like something was preventing them from running.
There's a lot of weird physical effects, isn't there?
A lot.
Landing traces is one thing, but people report just about everything under the sun. I mean, for that matter, under any sun.
Yeah.
Okay, I have another question from the chat room. This is from Christopher Harmon. And he says, I have a question for Albert. Do you think ETs can time travel?
Some of the cases that I know of and I read and I've been researching from other, I believe so. I think there's a possibility that they could go to the future and to the past, and they're able to do it. I mean, I don't know about all of them, but I think some of them are able to do it.
Yeah, they certainly do give prophecies and tell people things that will happen. I remember I was interviewing one lady, and she was talking to the mantids, and they said, this is going to happen with your relationship. She didn't want to go into detail. It was very personal. But I hear that all the time. One other contactee, real quick, Don Anderson, is largely conscious, like Dolly, not needing hypnotic regression, has taken on board a craft, human-looking ETs. He went with his little son, and the ET told him what was going to happen in his future, that he was going to meet this lady, showed him a picture of her, and it turned out to happen under very fortuitous circumstances. She's from a foreign country. Chances of it happening were almost nil, but it did. So they knew they could look into the future at the very least. I'm not sure if I call it time travel, but yeah.
Well, at least, yeah, they do. A lot of cases in the 90s or 80s, 70s, these ETs or whoever they might be, they warned us about future climate disasters and climate change and changes in that will, a lot of more earthquakes, volcano, and it's really happening. I think a lot
Yes,
of
it
these
is.
is
Absolutely.
beginning to occur.
Right.
Yeah.
I can personally tell you that time travel isn't what everybody thinks it is. When you leave this dimension, the third dimension, you go outside and you leave space time. In other words, you're not marking time anymore. You're out there. Your consciousness is light, and it can see everything, past, present, and future. You can look at it like you're looking at a book or watching a movie. And what they're able to do is, because they travel interdimensionally, is they're outside of space time, and they can see the future and they can see the past. They can interact only as an observer, though, because what's for us in the hard core of it, our physical body couldn't take that kind of time travel. We have to go outside of this dimension to do it, and it's very precarious because you're not really in it; you're out of it, just looking at it, and that's how they see time. And it's hard for people to conceptualize that. If we were to try to physically go back in time, there would be nothing there, physically there, it's gone. And in the future, you run the risk of evaporating your own body, because what it would take for you to get there would disassemble everything you are. Every molecule in your body would just evaporate and go away.
So, okay. So would you agree that time is not linear then? It's like,
No, it is not. No. And we're our consciousness, who we really are, because we're just indwelling these bodies, is capable of and seeing all time at the same time. We're conscious of it in another dimension, and we're here for a reason, to learn, and we've encapsulated ourselves in this third dimensional 3D body, and so it kind of cuts you off from seeing outside of linear time. Time is time, like, okay, first dimension is a straight line. Second dimension is a straight line in height, and everybody in the first and second dimension can only see inward on themselves. They can't see outward. By the time you make it to the third dimension, you can understand, because your consciousness is lightening up a little bit. There's less gravity than the first and second dimension, and your consciousness is able to make contact with your physical mind. And so you can conceive of understanding a fourth and a fifth and a sixth dimension. You can almost draw it out on paper. That because you understand it doesn't mean you can't get to it, but you can see out in your mind to do it. Everybody out, every dimension in front of us, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, they all can see in on us. It's always inward toward the bottom of it, and we're looking up from here. Once you leave here, all time ceases to exist in a linear way, because we're so gravity heavy here. It slows us down, and we're ticking, instead of all at once.
There are some people who put forth the theory that the Greys are us from the future, time traveling to the past. And I looked into it. There's a few cases you can march out to support any theory, but I think you know what I mean. But that's, again, shoe picking and cherry fitting. I think it's important that we look at all the evidence. And I'm going to back up here a little bit with a comment, because we were talking about the Mothman, but this is from Jackie Violet. Question to Preston, Dolly, and Albert. Great show, by the way. Why is it when the Mothman is mentioned, there are also UFO sightings? What was that about? And I think it's an interesting question, because what I have found when I was investigating the Topanga Canyon wave is it wasn't just sightings. There was a cryptozoological sighting of this sort of ghost dog. There was a religious miracle event. There was a major haunting activity going on at the time. I'm wondering if somehow these are all related in a weird way. I think that's probably what's going on with the Mothman, because there was UFO activity. There was a lot. That disaster with the bridge. I mean, there was a lot of paranormal
men in black reports and all that. I think there is a connection of the different type of phenomenon, and I think there is a connection between Mothman and UFOs. Yeah, definitely.
All right, and
they were reported, close to each other, and there was actually a report of a Mothman going into some kind of hovering red light type UFO incident.
Oh, wow.
According to John Keel, he wrote about it.
All right. This question is for Dolly, but I think it's something that we could all address perhaps a little bit. And it's from Don Curtis, who says, for Dolly, so with all the different types of ETs looking so different from one another, I don't think they're all that different, but okay, so different from one another, are they all from different planets?
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. They are from different planets. They're from different solar systems in our galaxy and then outside of our galaxy as well. They're all over the universe. And what we see coming toward us is generally from our galaxy. There are a few that are not. They're close though. And the fact that there are so many artifacts left in the physical record on this planet that literally point to certain places like Orion and Zeta Reticuli. These are all in our galaxy, but they point to, beings like us that live there, and they do travel interdimensionally to get to us. Yep.
Interesting. So what do you think, Albert, of the fact that some of these ETs come down and don't need helmets, and some have the classic fishbowl helmet? You know what I mean?
Some of the early cases, like in the 50s and 60s, they reported ETs like they were connected to the ship with a hose and some kind of breathing apparatus. But others, like you said, didn't appear to need that. And I don't know what to say about that. I think maybe some of them do come from a different type of environment from here, and they need help in breathing in our environment.
Yeah.
Others not. Maybe others come from places very similar to ours.
Well, there is a pretty big variety of being seen. And I've often been contacted by people saying, the reason I contacted you was because I wonder if you've seen this or heard a report of this type of humanoid. And here's a question from Donna's Happy Hour about this exactly. Has Albert had any other reports of green glowing creatures with orange triangular eyes and pointy ears? I don't know if you'd answer, Albert.
I have a database of 30,000 cases.
Probably one in there.
Yeah, I know reports of green glowing creatures. I know reports of orange triangular eyes. And I know of report with creatures with pointed ears. But I don't know if there's a report of a creature with all those three things together.
Yeah.
I cannot remember. It's not at the top of my head. But, they have creatures with pointed ears, others with glowing green, and other maybe with triangular shape eyes. Yeah, like a cat. Yeah.
Well, there we go. It's the variation. But like I've heard from many contactees, and Dolly mentioned, we are all one. And that was something that I was really interested to talk to Dolly about, because apparently that, like you said, Albert, the humanoid form does seem to be universal. Because I don't think we have any involving,
I
creatures that
know
are humanoid.
I know reports of creatures that appear to be. Have you heard of that? Have you ever the report from Wales, 1975, where the let me see. I'm going to send you the image. The witness encountered a landed UFO with a transparent glass top, and inside there was a creature that looked like a blob of jelly, and it seemed to be moving around. Definitely not a humanoid, but I'm going to send you the
Light
image.
beam. They're probably perceiving a light beam. They're non-corporeal, and they come in as light, pure light, and it, all energy doesn't stay, in one place. It moves, it undulates, and does all that. So they might have been superimposing two ideas that they had in their head, because the movie The Blob, right? And then now they're seeing this light blob, and they're like, oh, what is that? So yeah, it's probably a light beam.
I also have reports of tentacle beings, different tentacles. I don't know, definitely not humanoid. Other reports of just undefined beings, like light, like Dolly said, maybe just made out of light.
Yeah.
No form, maybe a sphere, but most 99% are humanoid form.
All right. And what's your take on the ET agenda? Why do you think they're here?
They've been here forever. They've been here probably longer than we have. Maybe they're supposed to. Maybe there's something special about this planet. They're supposed to watch or keep an eye, or maybe just they're doing something here. I don't know what, but maybe this is like a Grand Central Station where everybody drops by before they go somewhere else. Different.
My personal theory is that it's just more common than we realize, and once people reach that level of technology and are able to travel interstellar distances, why not? And it's clear to me there's multiple agendas. Some are just tourists, some are studying the life or looking at the various, perhaps, evolution and progression of a primitive species like us. Some are clearly here to help. I think there's a lot of healing cases, which you've pointed several. I found a lot in your humanoid days.
Yeah. You covered those a lot also, and
which I think is very encouraging. And the fact that they have been here since, we know this from before recorded history. I'm not worried. I think, they're not, I don't see this as a nefarious phenomenon in any way. So I'm not going to say everyone's encounter is all puppies and lollipops.
a lot of people encounter after effects that are bad for you. Some people even died after an encounter. But there's a lot of cases in which Preston covered a lot of them, in which they're here and they help people that either terminally ill or.
They've been holding up the human race for a while now, especially lately. Beings that are millions of years in advance of us, their wisdom, their moral amplitude, all of that is very, very well developed. They're higher on the evolutionary scale where knowledge and wisdom and how to use that. And the higher you go in your intelligence and your wisdom, the less likely that you're going to have no empathy. You're going to have greater empathy. And the smarter you are, the more empathetic you are. And beings, I was taught we're all related to one another. Okay. And there are places like us all over the universe, and they go and check up on us. It's like a thing. It's what they love to do. They want to see how we're evolving because we're all related. They're our progenitors. And they give us pointers. They try to help us when they can, but it's still up to us. We're our own people. We're autonomous beings. And we're all here together. And it's up to us as a one to elevate ourselves, And I think we see more of them now because literally Earth is failing at it. No offense to anyone, but not doing so good on the evolutionary attainment,
Well, I got your picture, Albert. So
that's from the one from Wales, UK.
Yeah, for those who can't see it, it shows a bluish sort of saucer-shaped object with a transparent dome, and I guess they are kind of blobby looking inside.
Two kind of jelly type masses.
Yeah, it could be light beings.
Well, there's absolute variation. And speaking of which, here is a question from the chat. We've got about 15 minutes left, so we're going to try and get through any other questions, but please forgive us if we don't make it. This one is from CT Guitar Guy 85. And he says, I have another question for Albert. Are you familiar with humanoid encounters with, quote, the grinning man? They have been seen with UFOs and independent of UFO sightings. I don't have any.
Well, I think this originated with the encounter with Woodrow Derenberger back in 1967.
Indrid Cole.
Indrid Cole, Point Pleasant. According to him, Indrid Cole was like smiling or grinning at him. I don't know, but they kind of exaggerate that now. They show a guy with huge face with a huge teeth, like grinning. I don't think it was like that at all. But there's been reports of strange grinning entities, mostly not associated with UFOs. But this Indrid Cole was definitely a UFO connection.
A demon, some kind of weird demon coming after him.
Could believe that. I honestly think that ETs, some of them do have a sense of humor and are just plain human. Others might have a sort of a fixed, a mask or some sort, or putting forth something that's perhaps not what or people are perceiving not clearly. I think there's a lot of things going on here.
they kind of some of them are the scenarios that you see or encounters are kind of like they just don't make any sense.
Right.
I don't
All right.
know.
Well, here is another question, and this is from On Your Shore. How come we never seem to hear about the Arcturians? Can you say anything about them? You know, I get a lot of reports. People will ask, where are the ETs from? And they can be evasive. I don't think we necessarily know where a lot of these guys are from. Dolly certainly talks a lot about that in the book Symmetry. But yeah, Arcturians, I don't know.
Well, you got reports of people that they told them, yeah, well, I'm from the planet, whatever, here and there, but some of them don't give you don't give you the star system, just the name of a planet. But I can't really think of a case where in my database which
I
where
keep
the
getting people telling me that they're Arcturians and they're from Zeta Reticuli, which is kind of amazing to me because a lot of grays are from Zeta Reticuli. It's in our galaxy, and I find that interesting. So, well, I don't know.
Yeah, well, they come from all over the universe.
Yeah.
I mean, there's lots of speculation that we originally came from Mars, and the fact that some of these guys look just like us, I think does have serious implications about who we are, our relationship to them. Did we even evolve on this planet? I don't know if you ever heard of that book by Ellis Silver, Humans Are Not From Earth. He kind of puts forth an argument why we might not be well suited to this planet. It's interesting, to say the least.
Yeah, we're kind of one of the only species here in the planet that do not know how to share with other type of species, other species, or either we destroy a place and we will move on,
right.
Destroy that place, and then we don't know how to adjust to nature around us. That's very important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, here's another question, which I'm not sure I fully understand, but I'll give it a shot. It's from Giorgio Piacenza, who is also friend, by the way, of Virgilio Sanchez Osejo. He says, are many contactees ET family? I guess you are
Like a hybrid?
Are they related to the ETs themselves?
We all are. We all are. Every last one of us. Yep.
I would say
No
that's
kidding.
a fair statement.
We were put here. We did not evolve here. That is false information. We did not evolve on Earth. And we were put here. And yes, we're all related to them. All of us.
Okay. Here is another question then. And it's, again, a little bit off topic, but we'd like our chat to be able to ask any questions. This is a neural channel. He says, I love my Bob Lazar. What about Bob? What's your take on Bob Lazar?
I think he had a lot of information that was proven true. I mean, true information, real information. I don't think this guy was a disinformation agent. I know there's a lot of them out there, but I don't think Lazar was. I think he's a pretty genuine guy.
Yeah, I agree. In fact, I would refer to Don Anderson, a contactee I mentioned earlier, who said that when he was taken on board, the craft he saw was exactly like what Bob Lazar drew many years later.
Right.
So when he saw Bob Lazar's drawings, he's like, oh, I think he's for real. And let's face it, Bob Lazar was just the first of many people who started to say exactly what he's saying.
Coming out now more than ever. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we're getting closer to the end of the show. So I want to make sure, Albert, that if we haven't touched any topic that you specifically wanted to cover, that you have a chance to do it.
No, I'm here. I'm open here for questions and stuff. No, I think we cover a lot today. That's my UFOs over Florida book. Yeah.
Yeah, this is definitely an excellent book that I would highly recommend. There's something about Florida that is particularly active.
Yeah. Now, do you have a website where people can contact you?
I have my email. I'll give it to you guys. I don't have. I used to have a website, but not anymore. They can contact me through my Facebook page. Humanoid another encounters. Here's my email. You guys could share it. Anybody wants to contact me, they feel free to do, please.
Okay.
Okay, there we go.
There it is. Oh,
Oh, no, this is just another question. I'll pull that up if I can get it. So this is a question from CT Guitar Guy 85. Do aliens often interrupt couples in intimate moments? LOL. I know David Jacobs reports on a case where the couple was in the middle of being intimate, and in marched the Greys right through the wall, took them and put them back in position. I don't know that.
I know Keel mentioned several cases like that where they say there's a couple in a car being intimate, parked, they used to people go in their car or whatever. And all of a sudden there's somebody bangs on the car window, and it's a Bigfoot or some kind of other creature. And for some reason they are attracted to that energy that we release when we're, I think I heard of that before. When we're
you're probably broadcasting pretty loud. Yep.
Well,
Yep.
yeah, well, I mean, if someone wants to get a hold of you, they can just go to your Facebook page, which
also,
which we do have on the show notes.
Yeah.
So,
And after the show, we'll make sure that we put it down in the notes of the show that what your contact information is.
yeah, so this is just a comment from Rad Peanut, who says, I personally believe Bob Lazar never seemed to gain anything from it, nor ever wanted to, and turns out a lot of what he said was true. Yeah, and I agree. And once again, people who step forward with these stories have not only not a lot to gain, they have a lot to lose.
They do. Yeah.
And certainly that was true in Bob Lazar's case. He was viciously attacked by debunkers. And whenever anyone, when people start lining up to shoot you down, to me, that's a red flag that this person is
Something's going on, right?
touching some nerves. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Bob Lazar knows what he's talking about. I personally endorse him to everybody. They should read his stuff.
Okay. Here's another question, which is more on current events in the UFO field, not so much humanoids, but it's again from Rad Peanut. Thanks, Rad Peanut. I've personally been wondering a lot about Project Bluebeam. Is it just fear-mongering rumors, or is there any reason to be wary? Thanks. I don't know, Albert, if you want to comment on that or not, but there's a lot of buzz in this UFO field about a false flag and a fake.
I think it's, I don't know. I think it's they're capable, possibly doing that kind of scenario, false information, holographic technology that, like Dolly said. But I don't know if it's about Project Blue Bean happening now anytime soon. I don't think so.
I have a question for you. You were in the Navy and you were a communicator, intelligence and that high. While you were at sea, did you guys ever see any triangular black net objects in the sky?
No, I was mostly out at sea in the 70s. I remember there were reports of lights and stuff, but no triangular craft.
Yeah.
One time we found floating in the ocean what appeared to have been a life craft, one of those lifeboats.
Yeah.
With Russian markings. And this was in the Atlantic, and it was all ripped apart. And then I remember they took it up to our location up in the radio room. Maybe I'm not supposed to talk about it now. But anyway, when we went to Norfolk, Virginia, and somebody went out to some people showed up and they took it away.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I had an experience in 2014. My cousin and I had gone to Sarasota to watch the fireworks. Well, actually, it was St. Petersburg. We were out on the beach after the fireworks on the 4th of July. We were out, you know how you run up the beach with your little nets and your flashlights and you go crabbing, crab catching. And we stopped and I looked down south, towards Sarasota Beach, and we saw 4, of the fire golden craft coming toward the shoreline that way. Huge. And they came in, they lowered, and then they suddenly jumped up and boop, they went back out, went straight out west. And then about 3 seconds later, we saw 4 more come down, and this went over and over and over. And I looked at my cousin and I said, what the hell? And she was like this. She couldn't talk. She wouldn't talk to me. And I'm like, oh my God. Now, in my mind, I'm like, who's out there? Okay. I'm sending messages. Who's out there? And one of them broke off and came right up the beach line at us. I mean, like that, and hovered over me for a minute. And all I could get from it is we're busy. And it went back. And you bet I was on the internet after that looking for reports from that. And I saw several and I tried to keep them, but they disappeared off my computer and now they're off the internet completely. And I don't know, you're in Miami, you may or may not have, it was 2014.
2014 in St. Petersburg, is it?
Yeah. Well, they were more down in like Sarasota, getting close to
okay.
Naples. Yeah.
Okay. I heard of incidents in that area, but that one specifically, I can't recall if I have heard it. No.
Yeah. Like I said, I saw 4 reports of it. Somebody got it on film from Sarasota and then it all disappeared. It's very frustrating when that happens on the internet. You know, it's like, oh my God, what are you know, what the hell?
Happens a lot.
You know something. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're at that point where we really should be wrapping it up. I know there's a few more questions in chat, but we don't really have time to talk about Skinwalker, which is a whole show on its own. But yeah, I mean, we'll definitely
really blown it out of proportion, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think so. But yeah, I really want to thank you, Albert, for coming on. Your books are amazing.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah, it's been a true pleasure. You're a true asset to the field, and I very much encourage people to check out your books.
Thank you.
We will have your Facebook information. Well, anyone can look you up pretty easily on Facebook.
Yeah.
Just by typing in.
And they can join the group, and they'll enjoy the group. Anyway, it's been my pleasure to have been here with you guys tonight. Nice meeting you, Dolly and Preston.
Nice
Finally, we got to talk. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
And what's the name of your Facebook group again?
Humanoids and Other Strange Encounters.
Yeah, I love that group.
Tonight. Okay.
There's so many groups with just absolute.
I'll send you a link on. Okay.
Okay.
Right.
And I would also like to thank all our listeners that have been watching us or listening to us from the United Paranormal Radio Network and the United Public Radio Network, coming to you from New Orleans at 107.7 FM and 105.3 FM. Thank you very much. It's been a joy tonight. Real joy. Thank you so much.
All right. That's it tonight. Thanks, guys. Thanks for watching. Till next time.
Thank you.
Very
Till
much
next
enjoyed
time.
having you. Thank you, Albert.
You're welcome.
Okay, we're off, I think.
Wow.
Nope,
No,
not yet.